There's no such thing as a stupid question. I don't think that's true. I do think there are stupid questions. Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the importance of the questions we ask when consulting the cards or any other form of divination. I, as a reader myself, find that the question formulation stage of a reading is the most important, and it will set the tone and dictate the efficacy of the reading overall. I've found personally that there seems to be a correlation between high quality questions and high quality answers. Questions that are reflexive and empowering and specific, and the way that we arrive at an answer that reflects all of those things in turn. If we were to map out a reading, the question would be the home base on maybe Google Maps or something, and the answer would be where we're hoping to go. But we can't really plot a path unless we know where we're starting, and the question is going to be that starting point. I have taken a few notes because I've tried to make this video a handful of times and found myself getting jumbled up, so I'm hoping I can meander my way through this even if I come back to the same starting place, which tends to happen in a lot of my videos. But I also know there are many out there who have spoken about this topic in length, so this is by no means a new conversation to be had, but I'm hoping my thoughts and findings can be helpful and constructive for fellow readers out there and those who are interested in the same sorts of topics that I am. A few people who have talked about this that come to mind are Amy from Strength Reversed. I know she has a video specifically allocated to asking questions. I really like the term that she coins in them, where she takes a question that is more predictive and less empowering, that is about somebody else or a third party, and terms it essentially to be a low budget question, which I find extremely funny. She's very insightful, so go check her out. I'll have her channel linked below. And I know there are many books out there that speak to the importance of the questions we ask in readings. One author specifically that comes to mind is Camellia Elias. In her work, specifically her Read Like the Devil series, wherein there are 3 books, one on tarot, one on Lenormand, and one on playing card readings. Highly recommend her work as well. But those are just a few other places you might want to investigate if you are really interested in this topic. Now, a few things that came to mind specifically are for us as diviners. I do find that we have an intimate and unique relationship with questions by nature, and what divination is to me is seeking answers, trying to ascertain something, the answer to something that we don't know, usually through a tool, a medium, or a channel that's outside of ourselves. And as curious individuals, questions are going to be of the utmost importance. And so the way that we approach questions, the way that we phrase them, the way that we think about them is going to matter when we are seeking an answer of some sort. Something that comes to mind is the way that we are ingrained with the importance of words. And I think, of course, words make up a question, so I am getting to something here. But I even remember seeing and hearing fairy tales as a child where there's the lesson of being careful what you wish for, the specifics, and being very methodical about the approach to something. There would be the lesson where the child who got a few wishes wasn't too specific in what they wanted, and what they got was something that came back to bite them in the butt. And I think that just goes to show how important words are for us as human beings in the way that we communicate, and also to, I would say, express our desires. What we're doing when we ask a question is expressing our desire to know something, but that expression needs to be specific if we really want a specific answer to come out of it. As somebody who reads for a good deal of clients and other querents, I find that a lot of the time somebody will approach with a question and we need to sort of workshop it. We need to restructure it and sort of break it down so that we can fully understand what it is they're seeking or wanting to know. Somebody may ask about when they may find love, and something I would say as abstract as time that can't be so knowable is not going to be helpful to investigate as far as a question goes. We're not going to get the best answer, in my opinion, out of that. If you identify as a psychic and do believe that you can have these sorts of predictive readings that don't have any bearing on the querent themselves, then maybe you would feel comfortable approaching a question like that. But for me, I might want to approach what somebody can do to find love, when they might be ready for something like that. So we're trying to break it down and deconstruct the question to really understand what they want. What they want is love. What they're curious about is when, because they'd like it, well, probably as soon as possible. So what the reading is trying to get to is how to make their approach in seeking out love the most advantageous for them, something that's going to be fruitful very quickly, and that's the answer that they want, how they can optimize their potential in that regard of life, or that facet of life. Likewise, if they're asking about work, and if there's going to be a new job coming up soon, perhaps what they're really looking to know is how to mitigate some conflict they're facing at their current job, and in their head, the way that they're going to do that is by changing fields or changing their job. And what we really need to know now is what's going on at their job, and working around that before we can then consult and decide if that's the proper avenue they need to pursue, and then how they would go about that. Another interesting thing that I find is that tarot spreads are really great inherently at deconstructing and helping to get a better grasp on a question. Generally, there's a theme behind any given tarot spread. I actually love designing spreads. I'll put a link to my playlist on all the spreads that I've designed and shared walkthroughs on. But essentially, there's one key focal point of any given tarot spread. It's meant to help or arrive at a certain place, and we're approaching it from multiple angles. So perhaps the point of the tarot spread is to help us feel, I would say, maybe the point of the tarot spread is to feel grounded and secure in who we are. And there's not one right way to approach that, and so it's a question that's very multifaceted and complex, as many questions tend to be. There isn't one way to answer that. I would say to answer it in just one specific way would be a little bit reductive and overly simplistic. So what we do is deconstruct it by looking at various pieces of this person, their life, their personality, things that they have control over, and how they might, I would say, work with in a constructive way those aspects to arrive at the place of feeling grounded and stable. Any tarot spread that has a sort of central theme is going to be doing this, and so for those who want to have very pertinent and potent questions, I think tarot spreads are a very strong way to start. But if you are looking to have more of a generalized reading approach, but want to arrive at an answer about something, I would say to sit with the question for more time might be helpful, to not jump in and not be so gung-ho about starting, and taking a lot of that beginning portion to formulate the question, to create a bit of a brainstorm around the question, is something that I find to be really, really beneficial. Having a bit of a consultation with a querent or client to understand that, to make sure that you're on the same page, that you understand their question, and then perhaps to rework it, because I find that a lot of people who come to tarot readings don't understand the nature and the way that they need to pose questions in order to receive the answer. Us as diviners need to be the ones to essentially sculpt their question into something that's workable, like clay. I have a friend who's seen me through the better portion of my tarot journey who recently remarked when in the context of a reading, that I was essentially deconstructing and rewording their question in a way that would suit the reading. And that really is, I think, what a lot of the time we need to do with ourselves and others, is to toy around with the wording, toy around with the ideas. So it starts with an abstract idea, something that is maybe a little bit more heady and hard to make sense of. We try to put these things into words, whether through writing or in a verbal context, and that's going to be our baseline of where to start, letting us know where we'd hope to arrive at as a question. But really, I think it takes a little bit more than that, and understanding that we need to be asking questions that are knowable, meaning that if we can't arrive at a place that or an answer, essentially, that it isn't the best question. And for those of us who like to be more analytical in our readings, who aren't predictive readers, the question does need to be knowable. And in order for it to be knowable, in my experience, a lot of times it needs to be reflective. It does need to be about the party at hand who is sitting across from you or yourself. So we can't ask questions about third parties. I can't know if Joe Schmo over here is going to fire somebody. I can't know if the mother of the querent is going to be mad if they don't attend the family gathering. What I can know is how the querent across from me can react, how they can act, what choices they can make, how they feel about certain things, what options they have at their disposal. These are things that are knowable and that we need to investigate. So I would say setting unrealistic not standards, but unrealistic expectations for a question is going to just amount to feelings of failure. I think ultimately it's not going to be a fruitful experience. It's going to be a confusing outcome. So knowing that the question is knowable, the answer to the question at least is knowable, I think it also needs to be constructive. If the place that we arrive at is not helpful in any way, knowing that somebody should leave a job or might leave a job is one thing, but how and what they're supposed to do about that is going to be another. It's like telling somebody that they need to leave, but not giving them any options on where they should go. That's not helpful. I mean, it's helpful in that it sets that first tone straight, but it doesn't offer any sort of nuance or continuance. We need to be able to set like a chart, a course for where somebody's going to go. So it needs to be constructive in nature. It can't just be more of this deadpan delivery where somebody's left with something that they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with what they've received from you, essentially. So it needs to be something that we can kind of wrap our heads around and work with continuing forward. What else do I have on here? Questions and wording. So I think that the way that we as diviners use our words is important, not even in the context of a question, but as we deliver a reading, making sure that we keep the question in mind. It's very easy to begin reading and not actually arrive at an answer that reflects what the question asked. If you don't answer the question, then the reading is essentially meaningless, or at least meaningless in that the purpose of it was not fulfilled. It might have a bunch of pretty flourishes where you've told the querent how great they are, or that they're capable in this capacity, or that this or this might be a great avenue for them to explore. But if their question was, what job, or how do I leave my job in order to get to this new place that I'd like to see myself in, and you don't answer that, then the reading didn't really serve its purpose. So returning back to the question is important, constantly using it as a touchstone, like an anchor in the reading. I think reiterating a question to somebody, if it's another party that's asking the question, like a querent or client, so that you can be clear that you understand them, because there are times when communication may be crossed and you are not interpreting their question in the same way that they mean it. And if you were to reiterate it to them, they might say, no, that's not actually what I meant. I meant something more like this. So in the same way that in school we're told to restate the question as we write it down or as we begin an essay so that it's clear as to what it is we're speaking about, I think the same applies for a reading. And I don't think this even just applies to when we speak to or read for somebody else. It applies to when we read for ourselves. We need to have this sort of baseline understanding in an introspective way where we're clear on our intentions. So by rephrasing the question to yourself, you're further ingraining what it is that you want to know. And if it doesn't sound right, if something sounds off, or if it doesn't sound like it's hit the nail on the head, then you might want to return to it. And I think by writing out the question in multiple ways on a piece of paper, we can see, what our options are like. So you might take the idea of wanting to find a new job and what that will be, and writing it out in a few different ways, or potentially deciding to take one part of the question and turn it into its own question. Things like that. Having a sort of sketch pad out there with a pencil, or recording something for yourself so that you can hear how it's spoken back is going to be helpful. It can't hurt. And I think the importance of taking that formulation stage of the reading seriously is very important before diving in. It's kind of like preparing for a marathon. If you don't, you'll get into the marathon and find that you can't make it to the end. I think the same applies to tarot reading, at least in some capacity. Now, another thing is the way that, and this is something that I was at least reminded of in the formulation of this video, trying to gather my notes, the old adage that there's no such thing as a stupid question. I don't think that's true. I do think there are stupid questions, and of course that's going to be subjective. But I know that I would say what I take away from that adage is more so that it's meant to inspire young children to be curious, to not feel shut down, to be expressive in what they want to know, to create young individuals who are willing to ask questions. And I think that's really important. But as an overall life concept, I think that there are questions that are higher quality, there are questions that are better than other questions, and of course, again, that's going to be subjective. But I would say, objectively speaking, there will be questions that are stupid or are not going to be very helpful. And we need to be able to spot those when we see them, or at least see the potential in a stupid question and turning it into something that we can work with. Because I don't think there are many questions out there that we can't work with. You might hear somebody ask, does this person love me? And think that's not a question I can work with. It's based on a third party. It's not reflexive. It's not constructive. It's more predictive, and it doesn't apply to the querent. All of those things are true, except for the part that it is, I think, workable. We can work with it. Turning it back into something that is put on the querent, letting them know that the power is in their hands, and that I would say putting any sort of certainty or agency into another person is not going to benefit them. So we need to redirect them in some way and make them willing to be redirected, and then to start on, understanding the fact that they want to be loved by this person, but really what they want is a relationship. Perhaps they want to feel heard, they want to feel seen, perhaps they want a closeness, they want to feel less alone, and that person happens to be the object of their desire, but it's not really the baseline of what they want. And since we can't account for that person and we can account for the querent, we should frame a question in a way that gives them the power to then go forth and seek and find that for themselves, that companionship or that ability to be heard. Perhaps they don't feel like they have their voice. So reworking questions that may be stupid or of a lesser quality, questions that are not helpful. That's our job, I think, as diviners or as readers. And I think we need to do that for ourselves as well. It's easy when we're confronted with an outside source or scenario where that becomes very apparent, but there are many times I find that we put cards or lay down cards about questions that we haven't thought about too in depth, or these are questions that are not super constructive or not well formulated, and we sit with the cards for a minute or two and we don't feel like we're getting anything from the reading. I think it's because we haven't prepared ourselves. We didn't pay much mind to the question we were asking, and it's because it was all happening in our head. It wasn't verbalized. There wasn't another party to bounce our inquiry off of before we began. So we need to be the ones to do that for ourselves. And sometimes that can be the hardest part, is doing that for yourself. It's a lot easier when there's another person and, that sort of interface happens before the reading takes place. That being said, I think I've rambled enough on this. I just wanted to stress the importance of the questions that we're asking, and maybe this helps somebody out there to take a few more minutes before they begin reading and they have better results in their readings for themselves and others. I've found that by taking a lot more time with myself and my clients, that the results have been, I would say, the efficacy of readings has increased. The way that I feel I'm able to help myself and others through divination tools has increased. And so I thought I would share just my 2 cents on that. I hope you are all well. Like and subscribe if this was fun or interesting. And until next time, bye.